We are live! Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Show Must Go On line. Today's guest is Jennifer Ashley Tepper. How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I am great. Thank you so much. Slim is really great as well, and he's going to come barging in at some point and wants to share his love with all of you.
He just wants to run in the middle. I get it.
It happened. Oh, I thought he was about to come in, and I was like, right on cue.
It happens. Yeah.
It's just like the what is it about Browser? Oh my God, Bruiser from Legally Blonde the musical.
Yes, Bruiser makes an entrance. That's a little Michael in the Bathroom Legally Blonde mashup for you already.
Thank you so much. This is amazing. I love it. For everyone watching at home, I want you to see. This is not planned, but so appropriate that we would both be coming with our Be More Chill hoodies and in different generations of it.
I know. I love it. I haven't worn mine in forever. And so it was such a cool thing that we accidentally matched.
Love everything about that. So quick hello to everyone who's watching. We see you. Comment, ask questions. Milo, Jamie, Miranda, Lisa, hello. It's wonderful to see all of you. And we will get to questions kind of throughout. And then especially I'll leave a portion at the end for all of you inquisitive minded people. Awesome. So I always like to start at the very beginning, a very good place to start. And let's hear your origin story. How'd you get into Broadway and then eventually becoming the Jennifer Ashley Tepper we all know and love?
I grew up in South Florida in Boca Raton, a great place to grow up, filled with lots of elderly folks. So they really nurtured the theater scene down there. So I was very lucky to see a lot of local theater growing up, became obsessed with it through tours, through seeing, local shows, through collecting cast albums, and really was just like New York or bust. I want to be part of musical theater. And I think because I grew up studying it from afar, I really became interested in putting the historian hat on. So from a young age, I was reading books and just kind of studying it. And I wanted to make musicals happen, but also be a historian. So I went to NYU, and after NYU, I had during NYU and after, I had some really great internships in the business, including with the creators of the musical Title of SHO, who then hired me when the show went to Broadway right after I graduated. And I ended up spending some time at the Lyceum Theater, where I many years later, returned for Be More Chill. And I have spent the last decade plus working in a lot of different capacities in, musical theater. Currently, I'm the creative and programming director at Feinstein's 54 Below. Currently, but also currently closed due to the shutdown, but will reopen at some appropriate point. And I have written some books called The Untold Stories of Broadway. 3 volumes are published and 1 is forthcoming. Expect an announcement about that very soon. I also have done a lot of work as a historian creating live concerts that keep history alive, from If It Only Runs a Minute, which is my series celebrating underappreciated musicals, to the Jonathan Larson Project, which was a project consisting of Jonathan Larson's unheard songs that we recorded as an album as well. So many things, gosh. So I worked over the years between graduating college and everything I'm doing now for a number of theater producers, including Ken Davenport. I worked on the Broadway revival of Godspell, among other things, with him. And I work very, very frequently with Joe Iconis, who I've been collaborating with for over a decade on Be More Chill, and many other musicals, Love and Hate Nation, Broadway Bounty Hunter, so many shows and concerts and other projects that we've done together. So we have a very unique collaboration of many years. And that is an overview, I suppose, of a lot of the things I've done and am doing.
That is the perfect overview. It's so funny when I was putting together your bio for the YouTube channel and I was on your website, and your bio is so thorough, and it literally said you need to shorten it because this bio is so in depth. And I was like, you're right. She's done so many things. But then as I was trying to go through, I'm like, I don't want to take this out. This is important. I don't want to take this out. And it's really amazing to see that, being such a fan, you've also been able to grow that and blossom that into such a wonderful career.
Thank you. Yeah, I definitely feel like a professional fangirl all the time. One of the best parts of 50 Below is getting to program, contemporaries of mine and people that I've come up with in the business, alongside people I've been nerding out over since I was a teenager, like Norbert Leo Butz and Sherry Renee Scott, which were just the first 2 people I came to mind because I was listening to the last 5 years today. But yeah, so definitely kind of turned. Hello. The whole theater
Hello.
turned into a career. And that's kind of like a thing that you never know you can do until you start trying to do it.
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Yes. Carly saying, obsessing over the posters I can make out in the background, merrily, tick, tick, boom, shuffle along, etc.
Yeah, we were just talking about this before we went live. I have been like trying so many different setups in my apartment, and you get like a different set of posters in each one. I was teaching a class consisting of a bunch of 11-year-olds recently, and I realized you could see the poster for Slut the Musical in the background. That was like the only thing. So I've kind of experimented with different poster backgrounds in my apartment.
Yes. Well, this is a great one. We are loving this. This actually, this goes to a great point with Jonathan Larson. You started talking about it, but the Jonathan Larson Project is so wonderful. I wish I could have seen, the in-person concert, but seeing the Barnes and Noble like little preview of the CD coming out, like, can you talk about that whole thing and how that happened?
Yeah, I have always, amidst my like fascination with theater history in general, there's definitely a couple of like topics I consider myself more obsessed with than anything else. One is Merrily Roll Along, which I've done a lot of work with. Oh, other side. One is Jonathan Larson and all of his work, from Rent to Tick Tick Boom to everything beyond that. So I spent a number of years going back and forth to the Library of Congress. Basically, when Jonathan passed away, his family very smartly donated everything to the Library of Congress. So it's like boxes of just demos and scripts and like anything you can imagine that he had in his apartment from his years writing musicals. Because I think he unfortunately passed away so young that we have this vision in our head of like, it was Rent and then he passed away so young, but actually it was like a decade plus of him writing shows like Superbia, which is chronicled in Tick Tick Boom, and so many other projects and songs that he tried to break through with that he didn't quite get to the level he wanted to with. And so I spent years going through everything and listening to like just tapes of, songs that nobody had heard, songs that maybe 20 people had heard in a rehearsal studio, 20 years ago. And really kind of figuring out how to create the song cycle that Jonathan might have created had he created his own Songs for a New World or Closer Than Ever, his own kind of song cycle of all of his material that represented his voice when he was a young musical theater writer. So that's how the Jonathan Larson Project came about. And, it recently passed like the 2-year anniversary. So all of us sitting in our apartments in quarantine, especially me, I think have been like paying more attention to Time Hop than usual. So I definitely relived that week at 54 Below through the time hops of it all. And for sure, we really want people to be able to perform those songs more. We want to get the show out there beyond just the album. And we definitely are actively working on next steps as much as one can during this time to kind of move the project forward and bring it to more audiences. So definitely kind of stuff percolating with that.
Amazing. Yeah, it's so much fun to see some of your favorite singers and then collaborators and producers like working on things that you already have like a kind of interest in, and then you hear it in a different way and you're like, ooh, yes, I do love hearing George Salazar singing absolutely everything. And it was that was a really fun time. And a little plug that if you want to see that video, you can see it on bwayshow.com.
I remember looking at you in the audience during that actually pretty vividly. It was unbelievably special to kind of be discovering these songs and going like, oh, this is for George. And oh my God, maybe we can make this into a 5-person opening number. And oh my God, Charlie can really like, Charlie Rosen, who orchestrated and music supervised, can really make this into like the kind of like techno beat that Jonathan imagined, but it's just like a demo that exists. So it was a lot of like sitting at the library by myself, imagining how my friends would bring their own unique talents to making it into a show.
That's amazing. And it's so funny. I was like, do I say CD? Do I say cast album? It's like not a soundtrack. It was just like terminology.
No, like the Barnes and Noble event was so funny. It was like so old school and like actual CDs that came out. I loved it. Liner notes.
Okay, y'all, for real, those liner notes are so cool. I love getting like the physical CD with like the things that you can flip through, and I always feel so funny like I'm back in like the early 2000s, but it's still a fun thing, and it's a nice way like people can sign it. Like it was so cool that y'all were just sitting there, and why not be a fangirl,
Totally. It's so part of like my origin story that I just ran through, but like when I was growing up, we didn't have the internet musical theater wise at the level we obviously do now, not even close. So cast album liner notes were like my main source of information. So getting to put together something that like is a throwback as much as the Jonathan Larson Project was, because all of that material was written, pre 1996. We wanted to be true to that idea of like, if this had come out pre 1996, you would have had those liner notes.
Excellent. Well, that definitely came along very nicely. Okay, so we need to just talk about like all things Joe Iconis, because we love Joe Iconis once again. And I love that you touched upon that you've been working together, but how did that start? How did the two of you meet and then get to the Be More Chill of it all?
My first internship I ever had was at the York Theater. They do amazing work off Broadway. And I was cataloging some old demos in like a back closet. I kid you not. This, like, as I tell this story, it becomes like theatrical, but it really was like Smash was a documentary. We all know that. I'm like sitting in a back office cataloging old demos, and I find this demo that has like a bunch of songs by new writers that clearly the theater had like kind of cataloged to put together their Neo series, where they did a concert that was like new emerging outstanding writers, and they would like have people submit songs for them. And so Joe, I guess, had submitted a couple songs, and I heard Helen, which is a song that's in Things to Ruin. And I was like, what is this? Who is this? Like, who writes songs like this? Because the song was so like incredibly crafted, as all, classic musical theater is. And it also was like about a topic that I had not kind of heard anyone write about that was very contemporary. I'll leave it up to people that are watching to discover it for themselves. But I was blown away by that. And then I heard Blue Hair. I heard a couple other Joe songs. I was just like, who is this guy? Started kind of going to some of his concerts. There's definitely a photo of me that's like a fan photo. I did not know Joe, of me, my sister, and my friend Katie with Joe at a concert at the Beachman, being like, can we take a picture with you? Truly. And when I was working on Title of Show, one of our producers, Sarah Katz, was about to produce a 5-performance run of Things to Ruin. And I was like, oh my God, that's Joe Iconis. Can I assist you? Can I get coffee? Can I make, copies of scripts? And she was like, yeah, come assist me. So I got to be like the assistant producer. And started kind of like hanging out with the gang, and we truly immediately like clicked like nothing else. And I became super close with like Joe and with Jason Williams and with so many of like the core gang who were part of Things to Ruin. And that was 2000. Very excited about Things to Ruin. That was 2009. And from there we like dove in, and we like never looked back, and like did, immediately started working on concerts together. The following year was Blood Song of Love at Ars Nova. This was followed by like so many just like albums, concerts, shows out of town. And it took us a very long time to get back to New York after Blood Song of Love, which has been well documented at this point. But Blood Song of Love, which was at Ars Nova, which was incredibly important to me, one of my favorite musicals of all time, did not get a great New York Times review, which kind of killed a lot of Joe's chances for getting other things produced in New York. And then finally, he started getting some things produced out of town, including Be More Chill in 2015 at Shoe River, which was amazing, and which was also killed by a New York Times review. So as the story goes, which I think at this point has become apocryphal, even though it's absolutely true, even though it was only 5 years ago, bad New York Times review, everyone who was kind of considering bringing the show to New York, from nonprofits to producers with resources, canceled their tickets and were like, well, better luck next time. The show, that's it. And two very incredible donors at Two River, Bob and Joan Recknitz, as well as John Diaz and Michael Hurst, who run the theater, and Kurt Deutsch at Ghostlight, who also made the Jonathan Larson Project happen, came together and were like, we need to make an album. Even though the show is not moving on, even the Bad Times review, let's just get in the studio and record this, and committed to, album form. And that happened in 2015. And then over the next 2 years, the show started like going, go ahead, I'll keep going. The show started going viral, just like, authentically so. Nobody was putting any marketing dollars behind it. People on the internet just started finding the album, loving the album, sharing the album. As we know, I'm kind of accidentally quoting this cut song from Dear Evan Hansen called Going Viral that Will Rowland used to sing, which is ironic. But the Be More Chill album started going viral, and that led to the very unconventional way that it got back to New York, which was that finally, because of this huge fan base, and because of the fact that actually one thing that happened in between was that I produced this series at 54 Below of new musicals that had been done in significant workshops or out of town, but not in New York yet. Be More Chill was one of those. And that was one of the things that led to the show getting licensed by R&H, Concord. And then it started getting done at universities. At universities, people would travel from like all over the world to see it. Like, it was just all of our actors were getting crazy fan art and like fans at stage doors. It just started going viral in all these ways, which led to, in 2018, Jerry Gehring and I together bringing it to Signature Theater with a bunch of other incredible producers, which led to the show selling out for months there and then going to Broadway at the Lyceum. And honestly, that's really the short version of the story. I should figure out the 100-word version, but that's definitely on the shorter side.
That is perfect. It is amazing to hear that story. Like, it doesn't get old no matter how many times you hear it, because it is such a great, conquering story of it doesn't matter. I shouldn't say it doesn't matter. It's, you find an obstacle and you find a new way to make it happen. And you find the passionate fans that Be More Chill very clearly has. And they're like, we're going to make this happen. And then it does. And just every time I hear about how a review makes it very hard for things to get, produced, or, it's a shorter run than it should have been. I've often thought, should reviews come out the day after the opening night so you can at least enjoy the party?
That's a hilarious question. I have had a lot of traumatizing opening nights in my time. I always talk about, I was at the original In the Heights opening night. I didn't work on the show, but because Title of Show and In the Heights were getting produced by Kevin McCollum and Jeffrey Sellers' office at the same time, a bunch of the Title of Show gang, myself included, got invited to the opening night. And that was the best opening night I've ever been to, because I wasn't working on the show. So I was just having fun. I loved In the Heights. It was great. And truly, when that New York Times review came out, I just remember, and this could be me romanticizing it, but I remember Lin-Manuel dancing with his mom, and Kevin and Jeffrey jumping on a table, and just the whole room exploded. And it really felt like Smash hadn't even come out at that point, but it felt like what it would feel like on Smash. And every other opening night I've ever had has been someone crying in the bathroom, someone's career is over. Even shows that I haven't worked on, I've never, other than In the Heights, had an opening night that was just joy explosion. So someday there'll be another one.
Oh, goodness. I mean, I love that visual of Lynn, and I can see it now. I was at the FLS opening night, and it was a jam. And so I can kind of envision, but it's obviously a very different thing from young, scrappy, and hungry Lynn to post Hamilton Lynn. But also that Be More Chill opening night, which I tell Joe all the time, holds a very special place in my heart, because it was the first opening night I actually got to cover as a reporter. But then the party itself, once again, I wasn't on the Be More Chill side of it. So I didn't even read the review until later. I actually never read the review because of all of it. But they had the cool green Mountain Dew with the cool drink, and everything was just the cake was awesome. And then Charlie Rosen and the band. It was just a really well produced party.
Yeah, that party was awesome. I have to say, on the scale of traumatizing opening nights that I've been to, that was not even in the the half of the most traumatic. It was in the better half. It was great because we had gotten to Broadway. That party was it was incredible. Charlie and that band alone was oh my God, it was such a fun opening night. And so many, because it was Broadway, so many of our friends could come, and it was just a big group of people that we loved and wanted to be there. So it was great. But definitely Joe and I still spent, some time locked in the bathroom reading the review, being theater is alchemy every time, and hits are all made differently, and hits all become hits differently. But there's a bunch of categories where usually there's the Tony Award for Best Musical. There's having a star in your show. There's if the show is a brand name. There's if the people that created the show have significant acclaim. There's all these things that you can check off. And to become a hit, by which I mean a show that runs and makes its investment back, and who a lot of people get to see, you have to check off a decent number of the boxes. And for an original musical that's pretty scrappy without a lot of the other things behind it, we did need that review, especially because there was this stigma that I think was unfairly put on the show, that it was only for young people, which, people who saw the show didn't agree with that. And just a lot of musicals in history that kind of make a mark for a specific way, coming to Broadway because of social media, it's usually the third musical that does it, that gets to be the big hit. The shows that are the Allegro of concept musicals, that's not the one that people, that's in the history books. It's the third or fourth time it happened. So we needed that review as kind of a vote towards being for everybody. And it's not to say that because we didn't get it, we were like, now we're immediately going to close. But we knew that it was kind of like a nail in the eventual coffin of Be More Chill that could affect us in a negative way and still might not have. We just had to kind of have that moment in the bathroom, which I remember very well.
Oh, isn't there always that Michael in the bathroom moment?
Usually.
But also to have a song like that with someone like George singing it and like it going viral before it hits Broadway and then being there on the first preview and being there, like, I mean, the closing performance of Michael in the bathroom was so emotional. You've been to so much Broadway, right? Like you are a Broadway queen. It is wonderful. Are there certain moments like that with, the Michael in the bathroom performance, or just in general, how like every number got like this raucous applause? Do those moments really like stick out for you?
Yeah, for sure. Nothing is more special than a closing performance, whether it's a show that ran for 100 performances or for like 10 years. There's just something so special inherently in theater itself about knowing that it is never going to happen this way again at every performance, but especially at the closing performance. Like you were seeing the last time that these people are going to be on a stage together in this way. And it's something that I really miss about theater that I think we all do. It's so amazing what's going on right now with like all of the stuff over Zoom that's like, what we're doing while theater is closed. But I really miss that thing of being like in a room with people, knowing you're all experiencing something together that can only happen one time, which nothing can replace. So certainly at the Lyceum, we had many of those moments. We had many of them at the Signature. I still remember like one of my most visceral, like Be More Chill memories was the very first, it must have been the invited dress at Two River, not the first preview, it was the invited dress. The first time that Eric William Morris as the Squip came out on the giant platform above the stage and was like, Jeremy, here, this is your Squip. I started sobbing. Like I truly started weeping because it was just like, we love doing scrappy shows with our friends in basements with like streamers and Christmas lights. But the idea that Joe had kind of written this show a little bit on Eric's voice, Eric had played it in all of the workshops, and that it was so fully realized by the designers and by Stephen Brackett, the director, and by Eric in that moment, it just was like, oh my God, this is so real. And it was so like exciting within the story. So yeah, I had a lot of those certainly throughout the process of Be More Chill.
Amazing. That also brings up a great point that like so many of the shows that you and Joe put on together, it fills up whatever space it is held perfectly. So whether it's at 54 Below or it's at the Greenwich House Theater or the Lyceum, you feel, or Two River Theater, like you feel like it was meant for that space. And it like, I mean, okay, am I saying it right? The Joe Iconis Christmas extravaganza?
Yes, you are saying it right.
I'm always like, is it extravaganza or spectacular? Because it is
pretty spectacular. Now it's extravaganza. I will not speak of why, but yes.
Oh, okay. Excellent. But that, when I got to see that this past year, it was like this explosion of happiness from all around. How did that start?
That was also a big part of like the origin story of me collaborating with Joe and with the family, because the first year that the Christmas show ever happened in 2008, I was an audience member. I was still just like a fan of Joe's who kind of worshiped the family from afar and went to Ars Nova and bought a ticket and sat in the last row and like ate a candy cane. And then the second year was like the first and biggest thing I had ever produced, because the second year, every year the Joe Iconis Christmas extravaganza grows. But from year one to year two, it definitely became more of a show. And it was like, all of these memories that I have of like putting that together with Joe and with the rest of our collaborators and making it bigger, and then the next year making it bigger, and like the amount of performances growing, the amount of characters and people, and how much of a storyline there was. And we love like every Christmas show year, we like will just reminisce about like, oh, remember when that person was in it, and remember these lines, and it's like our own tradition that like has just exceeded what we ever thought it could be. But one thing we've definitely been doing that you kind of touched on for years, I think, is like pre-immersive theater becoming a trend. There have been a lot of things that we've done that I think have qualified as immersive theater, but in a very like, if you're an audience member and this is not your jam and you don't want to participate, you do not have to. And if you're an audience member and like you do want to participate, you are welcome to kind of like dance, sing, get blood on you, get candy thrown at you, have a character sit in your lap. It's a very like choose your own adventure thing with the Christmas show and with other things we've done that I think as immersive theater has emerged and become more and more popular in the last decade. I've kind of been like, oh, we've done that. We were doing that as that's kind of been happening.
Yes. Yeah. I do love that it's also like at your own comfort level, because I think some people might worry about immersive theater kind of like being too in your face. Or as I love that Joe Iconis calls the first two rows the splash zone.
Well, every year for 13 years, it's been, well, no, not 13 years, a little bit less than that because this character wasn't always on the show. But for many years, it's been my job to like literally put a plate of like fake chestnuts on a table at the Christmas show and be like, just so you know, a visitor is going to sit here at some point, but don't be scared, which is my way of being like, Santa's going to sit here. And then at some point I'll do a scene with him about these chestnuts. And like, it just every year it's like, people are like, what the heck? And then at least one show every year, people are like, no, we don't want anyone to sit here. And I'm like, it's just an actor playing Santa. So yeah, it's always a choose your own adventure at the Joy Iconis extravaganza.
Oh, some people. And Slim says hi back. He's very happy to be here. I will even turn this. Let's see. Okay, there you get the full Slim experience.
This one's very part of it.
Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
It's immersive for him.
Yes, this is our immersive theater reporting experience. I'll even move his favorite blanket so that you can even see. There he is. Excellent. So being in quarantine, when the Broadway Bounty Hunter cast album came out and there was that listening and viewing party, like it hit so differently than I think anything else would have. What was that like for you?
We were so proud of that show and so proud of that album. And I'm just really glad that it is out there now. It was definitely a bummer to like have the album come out and not be able to be in a room full of people like dancing to it together and not be able to have like an album release concert and all of that stuff. But I think that right now, releasing new music, which so many theater people are doing, is like one of the ways that we can like keep things alive and keep going. So, I don't think that anything is ever going to happen quite the way that Be More Chill did, but it's been really exciting to kind of be able to say like, if a show happens and there's no cast album, it's like when a tree falls in the forest, like, and no one hears it. So truly, it's like, as a historian, sometimes I'll read about like an incredible sounding musical that happened at the Public in the 70s that like Joe Papp loved and that like even sometimes critics loved it, sometimes they didn't, sometimes audience loved it. It's like you read about this history and then you're like, if there's no cast album, the show was never licensed. It was never produced again. People didn't discover it for themselves and like do it at their, community centers. So it's just something so important about what Ghostlight does and what anyone who makes theater albums does. It's more than just like keeping the music alive. It's in like continuing the show's legacy. And we're really excited about like the future of Bounty Hunter, getting that show out there in different ways, which when theater reopens is definitely part of the plan.
That is such a good point too. And it makes theater so accessible. It's one of my favorite reasons that Broadway and Bryant Park exists, because as a kid growing up, like when you don't have a lot of money and you know that the Thursdays in July and August and whatnot, you can go and bring your lunch and go with your friends and family and have this free concert. And then that shows you new musicals that maybe you weren't going to actually get to see any bit of it. And then you can go and rush it. Like I've even heard on your podcast that I was listening to that was really great. I don't know if there have been new episodes recently, but the one on the, it was nice to hear some of these stories of like these buildings and like your experiences growing up and doing like any rush. Like, can you talk about what it was like growing up and like doing any rush or standing room or anything like that?
Totally. It's something that I've really thought about during quarantine more than other times, actually. I just so long to kind of like sit on a dirty New York street with other people waiting for rush tickets. It's something that I really miss. As weird as that sounds. When I moved to New York when I was 18, it was like truly a kid in a candy shop, for like lack of a better way to describe it. Like having dreamed of New York for so many years, I visited New York only 3 times before I moved here. And it was like, as an NYU student, we had access to all kinds of like free tickets through school, and also like rush tickets and lottery and like standing room. And I honestly, a lot of things about NYU were great, a lot were not great, but I do think I got even more of an education from running around town seeing shows than I did in class. And I learned so much from like those times when I could manage to like see a show 4 times and take notes on the changes during previews and like observe what was happening at the theater. It truly was like a huge part of my education. And I probably at every single Broadway theater, if I wanted to, I could be like, that's my most memorable rush experience there or there. The other day someone was telling me that they watched The Company that got filmed with Raul Esparza. And I was like, oh yeah, I definitely like rushed so I could be in that audience and like sat on the street in front of the Barrymore. I remember this so well, reading a book about Helen Hayes, which was like, a very old book. And I like finished the whole book during my like 4 hours in the rush line. But what was so crazy about it was that it's this like, Helen Hayes was a young person in the theater so many decades ago. And she talked about an early like equivalent of rush tickets. She was like, Mother and I went to the like casino theater and we waited in line and then like the cheap tickets in the balcony. And I was like, oh my God, like this wasn't rush tickets. It like was a weird thing that I've never forgotten, the parallel of old school rush tickets. So I think they are so important for accessibility, for everybody to kind of be able to see shows, especially like at all ticket prices.
100%. Yeah, that's how I saw Be More Chill's first preview on Broadway.
Oh my God, what a night. I remember it
well. So much fun. And it's so funny to like, because we're in that age range to like know what it's like with all the ones in person. And then now it's kind of mostly gotten digital, and some of them are of course still in person, but it's not the same as it used to be. And I love that now there's more of an opportunity for people who maybe can't be in the city at, 7 a.m. and just stand around there for a few hours. But some of those still do exist, but also you can just enter digitally. Like, do you like that that's changing with the times?
Totally. And, part of like the whole new generation of rush and all of that started with Rent. As mentioned, like it did, like cheap tickets that you could kind of get last minute has always been a concept that existed on Broadway back to Helen Hayes days. But when Rent happened in 1996 on Broadway, the accessibility thing was so important to those producers and those creators, making it so that people could see the show for $20. And the way that happened was like the rent heads would sleep on the street. And there's many pictures of this, of like sleeping bags all up 41st Street, until it became clear that was becoming unsafe. Even though ironically Rent and, the transformation of Times Square as like Rent and Disney and all those things happened in the 90s made it safer. But as shows kind of discovered the advantages to doing things online and doing lotteries that were not like sleeping on the street for hours, it started evolving. And honestly, anything that evolves like that, I'm a fan of. I think that like the ways that, the discount ticket system has evolved to kind of create more accessibility and to create more sales for all shows. All of this can really be seen as a net positive as long as people are like strategizing about it in the correct way.
Totally. Yeah, that all definitely makes sense. As you talk, I love how you're able to just like throw in so many Broadway facts, which is your thing, of course. Do you have like a favorite Broadway fact?
That's funny. It's honestly, I don't have a favorite, but I do on a like day-to-day basis have like random things I've like become obsessed with. My next book, the 4th volume of Untold Stories of Broadway, in each volume I explore 7 current Broadway theaters and 1 lost Broadway theater. And so typically, if I'm working on a book, it's like something about that. And the upcoming book, the Lost Broadway Theater I'm doing, is actually all of the theaters that were knocked down to build the Marriott Marquis. So the Morosco, the Bijou, the Helen Hayes, the Gaiety, and the Astor, which were 5 Broadway theaters that were destroyed in the early 80s to build the Marquis. So right now, a lot of the facts that kind of swirl around my brain on a day-to-day basis, a lot of them are about that. It's funny because usually when I'm writing my books, it's so inspiring as I'm like in the process to see shows in those theaters and to like walk down those streets and to be seeing people whose stories are going to be in the book. And kind of in the vacuum we're in during quarantine, without that, I've had to like create it in my mind. So I've just been doing a lot more, deep diving into history and pretending I'm in 1981, like, chaining myself to a building.
Very immersive of you.
Yeah, different kind of immersive.
It's funny. I was thinking of when I went to London this past year, sadly, like right before Be More Chill was coming, like we booked our tickets. And then I swear, like a week after Be More Chill announced that they were coming, like a month after we were going to be there, as it always is. And when I was walking around, I saw like Lyceum, at different things. And I would take a picture there. And then I would like walk over to the other palace and just take a picture there, because it's nice to feel connected, even if you're not seeing the show at that time. Are there things like that whenever you're like walking around New York or London or any city that like gives you that spark of familiarity with a Broadway related thing?
Definitely. One of my favorite things to do in recent years has been to kind of go to a random city, either because it's like, oh, I have an opportunity to do like a master class or like see a friend in a show, and just kind of walk around the downtown area and find all the places that used to be theaters or that are current theaters, and literally just like looking at like the fire escapes, looking at the lobbies, like looking at kind of the actual physical structures. It makes me it like is so inspiring. I spent like time that I've spent in Boston kind of just seeing their old theater district, and things that I think that people now walk by without realizing like what they used to be is always so fascinating in other cities, because like in New York, I know it so well at this point. And it's funny that you bring up London, which like Be More Chill in London was like, I think one of the last things that I really did before all of this hit, going there, and thank God I got to do that. I'm so grateful for it. But I studied abroad in London as an NYU student, and it was so formative because for me, I was like, I'm spending the rest of my life in New York. It's New York City. Like I love other cities, but like I'm going to live in New York forever. So to get to spend that time in like New York sister city and have those experiences of like the Lyceum where Lion King plays, and, really get those parallel versions of our theater industry and learn about them over there. And then to get to return at the beginning of this year, I think it just like informs what I know and believe about New York so much more, getting to explore a different angle, element, city.
Excellent. Yes, I love that. Okay, so Miranda has a question here, and I do feel like going back to Tick, Tick, Boom, I love the connection of telling, the Jonathan Larson story, and also thinking back to Lynn's yeah, there it is.
It's over there. Continue.
And Lin-Manuel Miranda's story within the Heights, and of course his connection with it, and now with the movie. So Miranda's asking, how has living through a pandemic and the restrictions that places on gathering to tell stories and make art impacted the way you approach Tick, Tick, Boom?
So on Tick, Tick, Boom, I'm the historian consultant. So it's really my job to kind of give information to the team, including Lynn and including Stephen Levinson, about Jonathan and about the, all the people that were part of the story of Tick, Tick in different ways. So for me, nothing has changed about my job on it since everything with pandemic. I am sure that is not true as far as other creative team members. But for my role on it, I am just there to give historic information that informs the decisions that other people make about how to make the movie.
Totally makes sense. Is that back filming now?
I believe so. Who knows with all the pandemic stuff going on, what happens where.
Very true. Very true. We saw Lynn was in a trailer during this Hamilton thing, and we were like, is that Tick Tick or is that his Dark Materials? We will find out.
Well, I feel like Lynn is always working on something, and the best part I think is finding out later, oh, that was that,
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so I did take a few notes here. Miranda said, I have to ask you about Mac and Mabel. And I think that she just wanted you to talk about Mac and Mabel. So I'm just going to leave it really open to you to talk about it as much as you'd like.
That's so funny. Mac and Mabel, I love that show. I love that score. It's my favorite Jerry Herman show and score. And seeing it at Encore was incredible. Finally getting to see such an amazing, fully realized production in that way. I'm sitting by a bunch of my records, and I feel like if Mac and Mabel's one of the main things here, I could probably find it. But yeah, we love Mac and Mabel. And as long as I'm talking about that, I should give a shout out to, as I was learning and loving underappreciated musicals as I was growing up, Not Since Carrie by Ken Mandelbaum was my Bible. That book taught me about shows like Mac and Mabel, and really inspired me to become a theater historian. So anyone needs a book suggestion, a book recommendation, I'm sure you can get it on many, explore your indie bookstore website, find Not Scary, if you need to order it from Amazon. But that book, it definitely talks about Mac and Mabel and tons of other musicals that were underappreciated.
Excellent. So I'm going to take a moment here and look at some of these questions throughout, because in case if y'all didn't notice. I wasn't wearing my glasses the whole time. And I feel like an old lady just being like, I can't see this. Milo saying my friend bought me a loser geek whatever tee and I love it. I haven't worn it yet because I don't want to sweat it. I get that. I've actually, this quarantine has given me a really good appreciation for wearing things that I wouldn't necessarily wear or like have the opportunity to, and being like, life is way too short.
I'm like, I'm so in the dark now. That's not really cool. Okay. I'm in the dark because it's getting dark outside and I'm by the window, but keep asking questions.
Amazing. I feel like this is one you'd get 50 times, but as a historian, do you think about how you're creating primary resources right now and a part of Broadway history?
Yeah, I take it really seriously, especially with my books, which, hopefully will continue to exist for a long time. That with a lot of people, a lot of shows, it might really be the main source for that information. And so my publishers, my editor, we all take it extremely seriously that, like, even if, only one person is reading this 100 years from now, like, we want it to be accurate. We want it to be, true to the stories that actually happened. With that said, I think one of the most fascinating things about being a historian and an interviewer and someone who writes books, like the type of books that Untold Stories of Broadway are, is that nothing is like the truth. Everything is someone's perspective of what happened. And as I wrote my first book, I discovered that in so many ways, like, I would interview like Lynn Ahrens and Stephen Flaherty separately and then find like their recollections of, like, the Once on This Island opening night were completely different. And that's because, like, they're two different human beings. It's not because either one forgot or was lying or anything like that. So I have kept that in mind with all the stories. And I think that when you're reading any history book, it's really essential to go like, oh, my perspective of what I just described to you about Be More Chill opening night is probably, it's not your perspective. It's probably not someone else's perspective that was there. And so history is really just comprised of, like, people's imperfect perspectives and memories. And that said, like, kind of keeping a truthfulness about it is super important nevertheless.
Excellent. Yes, very nice. So writing books, which it's such a permanent piece of history. That's amazing, right? It's so nice when you are able to like physically just like sit back, relax with your pup here, maybe light a candle and just like start reading. I know. He's like, I could go for a good book right now. Do you find, like, because you've been doing it for so long and producing and wearing all these different hats, like, as you're working on one project, are you kind of taking notes and thinking like, oh, how can I maybe incorporate this into the next piece?
All of it feeds each other. Like, all the things feed each other. There's a lot of situations where I've been like, oh, I never would have been able to get an interview with this person if I didn't book them at 54 Below and they didn't know me from that, and vice versa. But there's also a lot of me being like, oh, I wouldn't be as good of a producer if I hadn't interviewed sound designers and understood really well what they do from my time as a historian. And also on the flip side, like, oh, I want to make sure that I impart in my book this piece of information that nobody understands about how theater works, which I wouldn't know unless I was hands-on working on a show. So I think it's that thing where, like, I would never want to be a critic. Like, I respect a lot of critics, even regardless of what we've said about the New York Times reviews having certain effects on shows. But I really do, like, I grew up learning about theater also from critics and journalists, and I have so much respect for them. I would never want to be a critic. But in, like, those kinds of pieces of history, it's like, a lot of times the review is the only kind of thing you have to understand what a show was like that you didn't get to see. So, I know that critics strive to, like, make a piece of, like, work that can, like, represent a show. And I try to keep that in mind as well, that sometimes, like, people might only really be able to experience the show through what I've said. So, like, how can you do something that's true to how you saw that show or saw that actor or anything and give your perspective, but not put something on it so that somebody can't put their own perspective on it. Wow.
Yeah, there is that history part. Even just having, like, with the Tony nominees that just came out and Celia Rose Gooding on, like, the page there with on the New York Times arts part, I was like, hey, Dad, can you just, like, keep that and don't recycle that newspaper? Because I do love, maybe it's the journalist in me, maybe it's just like loving the photographs, but there's something really cool about, like, having the article and the big photograph from a time period and being like, I was here in this moment. I feel like this is like a come from away like at the start of a moment.
Totally. And yeah, I feel like just like liner notes are special, like having actual physical pieces of like newspaper articles, like history. Hopefully that'll never go completely away, even in our digital age.
Yes. And I love what you were talking about, interviewing like the set designers and sound engineers and everyone with that. We've had some shout outs here about Charlie Rosen, like you were saying before, because Charlie is a master with everything that he does. Do you find that now that you've been working with, the industry in so many different ways, there's a newer appreciation? Maybe it is with the technological age and people can like actually understand all the different people who like have a hand in it and get to see them on social media, but that it's the writer and the director and the ensemble. I mean, that Be More Chill ensemble swing page on Instagram was like, they had so much info.
Yeah, I definitely feel like social media has created new appreciation for people in the show that are not the stars. In the 80s, a lot of people who I've kind of interviewed have gone out of their way to mention that, like, even as recent as the 80s and the early 90s, until Rent kind of changed the stage door culture and changed the kind of generations that were coming to the theater, there was not a stage door culture. There were not people screaming outside unless there was like a gigantic star in your show, unless people wanted to like glimpse Katharine Hepburn. There wasn't like a big stage door crowd waiting for like, the cast of Cats to come out of the stage door every night. And that was Cats. Cats was a huge hit. So I think that what's interesting is that social media has really like stoked the flames in the fire of you get to know people through the internet, whether it's like the ensemble member, whether it's like, David Corns, who's like a set designer, has one of the most like incredible social media presence is. That's just like a designer I thought of, but a lot of designers have kind of cultivated that because, social media is great in that it's a way you can always have an audience. You can say something or get a message out there that you want to. We're no longer 100% reliant on like, can you get it into a column kind of thing. So it has democratized kind of who people are that have fans in a lot of ways. It's created a new stage door culture. It's also, I think that it's obviously just like all social media, all elements of social media, it has positive aspects and negative aspects. I think that a lot of the like privacy issues that people in the theater have had in recent years are because like it's hard to know where the line is with current internet culture and stage door culture. So it's something that I think when we return to live performances will definitely evolve, especially as stage doors in themselves will not be the safest places to be immediately post-pandemic. So I think we'll see kind of the way that all works evolving.
Yeah, the Be More Chill stage door was just like nothing I've ever seen before. I mean, I wasn't there at the Rent days, so I'm sure that was all very crazy. And, I guess Hamilton and whatnot and Dear Evan Hansen, but just seeing the fans and then also the give back from the Be More Chill family, like the fact that George would stay out. I mean, I remember the last performance was like, has everyone gotten an autograph? I want to make sure that absolutely everyone gets an autograph. And that like really speaks to the connection between the show and the fans.
Totally. And I don't think that the stage door in itself is ever like a net positive or net negative. Our Be More Chill company, like more than anything, wanted to meet those fans and like would have stayed out there for 4 days if they could have. But I do think when we get to the whole like Ethel Merman never missed a show, why are current Broadway actors missing shows? And you're like, they literally stayed at the stage door for 3 hours using their voices, even when they tried not to. And that's something that has like created fatigue vocally and otherwise for actors, especially in the last 10 years. And it's something that like, not just the stage door, but also like press, having to like market yourself on social media constantly. There's a certain demand. And again, I just use Ethel Merman for example, like the chorus ensemble member in Anything Goes was certainly not at the stage door. They were not doing like TikTok videos. There's a certain level of other demands and, opportunities that actors today have that are amazing and that like allow them to connect with people and that make shows better experiences, but that also have kind of created 8 show plus week that is not always like sustainable. So I think there's definitely a happy balance and a happy medium. But even for shows that are not Be More Chill or Dear Evan Hansen or Hamilton that don't have like a massive young fan base like those shows do, there's still like, you can walk by any show when it's getting out and there are people waiting at the stage door, which was definitely not always the case.
It is an amazing thing. And I wonder what the future of stage dooring will be like, because it is amazing, especially if they aren't those massive stage doors with all the fans kind of like making sure to get their thing. But you actually get a moment. Like I remember for Spring Awakening, my friend Jackie and I saw it 2 weeks before it closed on Broadway. And all of the actors kind of like picked a group of friends and just like we chatted for like 15 minutes, or maybe it was 5 minutes. And in my head, it's like, but it was such a special moment. And like seeing Matt Doyle and Gerard Canonico, which is really funny to like see this like young SHO picture and then be like, oh, hey, we're now adults. It's very funny.
Yeah, I love that.
So Cindy's asking, do you think Stage Door is going to be in a post-COVID world?
Do you know, I definitely don't think the stage door will be like gone forever. I think there is a lot of stuff that is going to come back and evolve gradually. I think that in March or April, everyone had this like idealistic, thought in their head of like, that's going to be amazing. The first night back on Broadway with like 41 theaters with people applauding at the same time. Like, we're going to see shows coming back gradually. We're going to see a couple shows at a time. We're going to see audiences rebuilding gradually as there's like a campaign to have like, people come back to the theater and back to New York. Every element of theater is going to kind of follow that gradual trajectory. I think that like at the beginning, obviously, like there won't be certain kinds of shows right away. There won't be certain kinds of things going on right away. The stage door being one of them. And that doesn't mean that like in 4 years, we won't have the stage door. It might be in 2 years. It might be in 1 year. But I don't think that we should think that what is happening in the like month when things start to return is like, this is the new normal. No, it's like, we all have to kind of make this gradual way back because it's been so long. And there are so many reasons why we need to like slowly ease into what the new era is going to be.
Yeah, definitely. Let's just start with the live performances and then we will get back to the added bonuses.
Totally.
So I want to make sure to take a moment and give you the opportunity to share any nonprofits or charities that you would like to shout out.
I think that there's so many like organizations doing incredible work during this time. I've just continued to like plug the Actors Fund. And I know that for people at home, it might seem like, everyone is, plugging the Actors Fund, but it is a time when like people in the arts just need more help than ever. There are so many people I know that like truly are like going to the Actors Fund for help with rent and for help with health insurance. And like everybody in the arts is unemployed and has been for many months. And just the level at which the Actors Fund has been able to help is incredible. What Seth Rudetsky and James Wesley are doing every day, every night is incredible. And anytime I can, I just want to say like, the Actors Fund is very much like an umbrella organization that helps everyone in entertainment. It like helps in so many different ways, and you cannot go wrong if you have the resources to donate to the Actors Fund.
Very well said. Yes. I think people sometimes do get confused because of the Actors Fund name, that they think, oh, it's just the actors, who also are very deserving, but it is like everyone in the process.
Totally. And you know what? It's so funny because I totally get why that is misleading in some ways, but it's like, I should really write something about this or do something about this. But like the Actors Fund has been around for so many years. Like sometimes I'll read something about the Actors Fund in like the 1910s and I'll be like, oh, it has this name because it did start that way. And as with so many things, it's like, that's just what it's been called, but it really is for everybody in entertainment.
Excellent. So where
can the dark, you guys, can you see me? I'm still here.
Yes. It's like
we were predicting that it would like get so dark by this window as we were chatting, but I'm glad we've been able to like see the sunset in reverse.
It's been very entertaining just kind of see Jen go into the darkness.
Wow, it's very funny. I think I saw someone say, yeah, hi Miranda, Jen Tepper, take back the dark. Yeah, I definitely feel like I need a lighting designer in here, and it's very Halloween and October-y.
Ooh, perfect. Yes. Actually, okay, this is making me think of, there was a very special moment that Be More Chill got to take part in, speaking of lights and remembering someone who passed away. Can you talk about when you're dimming the lights for a Broadway actor? And Doreen just passed away this weekend, and our thoughts are with her and her family. But when Hal passed away, and then like Joe got to do the whole like the post-show hang, like what was that day like?
You know, it was such an incredible opportunity that we had that Joe and a lot of other folks that we work with, both in Be More Chill and outside of Be More Chill, got to take the stage for these Wednesday night hangs. It was something that when you imagine kind of the family going to Broadway, I think we would have always been like, oh my God, we get to do this. In reality, on a week-to-week basis, it was like a crazy scramble, a crazy like press thing, a crazy, will they sell tickets? I remember like, one night, we ran, like Joe, Jason, and Lance and I ran from the Bounty Hunter Theater downtown in like a cab to the Lyceum because it was the night of the like Black Suits reunion at the post-show thing. And like, it was our preview of Bounty Hunter. And so like, all of this is like truly the most grateful, truly the most like incredible experience. But at the time, it also felt like, oh God. And so we were so lucky to get to do that and to get to kind of honor Hal through Joe making a speech when he passed away and when the lights were dimming for him. It happened to you when my dad was visiting, and I just remember standing outside the Lyceum with my dad watching like our Broadway lights dimming for like, you know, my legend hero Hal Prince, which was like a very special memory. And Hal actually came to see Be More Chill at the Signature and was so kind to Joe and I. Daisy Prince, who's like I think one of the most magical people in New York City, brought him. And you know, I think that just having that continuity between generations is something that's so important to us. So it was cool to celebrate him.
Yeah, that was a really, really special moment. And those post-show hangs were just, I was so lucky to have been able to like see and film some of those. And it was just like the blue hair with Andrew Keenan Bolger. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Oh my God, so crazy.
Amazing. So we do have another advice. Best, Miranda's asking best advice that Hal ever gave you. And I'll even add on, Jamie's asking best advice from Jason Robert Brown. So we're just getting, what advice have you been getting?
I really think that with people like that in the industry that I've gotten to know over the years and spend time around, it's not always as much of like, you know, I wish I could give you a pull quote, and I probably can if I think about it, but it's more just the fact that people like that, people that are in the generation above you, the generations above you, kind of investing their time and energy in speaking to you at all. And in, you know, I had an interview with Hal Prince when I was 26 years old, where he took the time to sit with me for an hour and a half and, you know, talk to me about his career when he spent decades doing that. It's like, how many times can you do that? But he still took the time to mentor so many people. And with Jason, you know, I think very similarly, Jason has put himself in a position where he's like a connector between generations, where like nobody knows the best young musicians like Jason Robert Brown, and nobody has that like, you know, reach towards the previous generations that he has had, including Hal. So I think that, you know, people like that help us, like theater is passed on between human beings. It's not something that like you can do without human beings in a room. And they very much exemplify that generosity of spirit. I will say that there is a Hal Prince quote, which he certainly said inspiring pieces of advice to me in person, but there's just a specific quote from his book, which everyone should also read, about like all a young person in this world needs is one person that they trust, saying, you can do this, do it. And that is so true. Like I think we all have to like reach inside ourselves and do things that haven't been done before, but there's something about that vote of confidence from, you know, a mentor or a hero like Hal that goes a long way. So I try to remember that.
Yes, definitely pay it forward. If you ever see someone that, if you've been lucky enough to be mentored, it's really important to pay it forward and help the next generation.
Totally.
It makes me just think quickly of Joe Iconis and Jason Robert Brown had a little exchange on Twitter about young people. Because 13 was one of my favorite musicals, and I still sing and quote it all the time. Like, what it means to be a friend, that's my jam.
I love 13 the musical. It's like there's a third. I spent a lot of time around 13 because Aaron Simon Gross, who played Archie, not a lot of people necessarily know this, but they will after they read my next book. But Aaron and I grew up together in Boca Raton, and he's been my like honorary little brother for many years. And while 13 was on Broadway, it was like right after I graduated college, and I spent a ton of my time like basically babysitting would be the wrong word because like I was 22, he was 13, and we were more like best friends or like honorary sister brother. But we would say that I was like Mary Poppins, and we would just like run around town having Broadway adventures together during 13. And so I got to hear a lot of like, oh my God, this person's mad at this person, or like these people made out backstage. And I very much felt like an honorary, like, you know, 13 company member, which was so crazy because obviously Charlie Rosen was part of that company, and I did not get to know him until a little bit later. But that 13 cast has a lot of amazing stories, and they are chronicled in my next book.
I am so excited. I can't wait for this next book. That was the first show I ever saw in previews, and then again after it opened, and like remember when a song was taken out and being like, oh my God, this actually happens.
Yeah, I love 13 so much. I definitely remember like all of those steps in its evolution. And actually, it was at 13 eventually ended up not having an intermission. But when it did have an intermission, I was there one night, turned on my phone and was like, oh, our title of show closing notice went up, and like found out an intermission of 13. I knew it was like happening that day, but I always remember that. And when I tell that story, people are like, that didn't happen because 13 didn't have an intermission. And I'm like, well, that day it did.
Wow, that is phenomenal. So, where can everyone find you on social media, and like any last words you'd like to say directly to your fans?
I'm a ghost now. You guys, this is so funny. It also is like not actually that dark. Like there's still, it's very weird what's happening here. You can find me on Instagram, on Twitter at Jen Ash Tep, the first 3 letters of each of my names. You know, come hang out and nerd out about Broadway things with me. And thank you for having me. This was so fun.
Thank you. This has been wonderful. And thank you to everyone who's been watching and commenting along. I see a lot of my Showtreons are here. That's the BOA Show Patreon that you can join the squad. We do trivia and video chats. It's a fun time. And I now BOA Show the podcast. So if you're like, I love these interviews, but videos aren't my jam, now you can just listen to them. Haha. Yay. And that's all my news. You can find me at BOA Show, as I'm sure you can see through this wonderful banner right here. And just like listen to all things Mr. Joe Iconis and Jennifer Ashley Tepper, because their combination together just makes my heart so happy. And everyone that's in the Joe Iconis family that you have helped through producing and just spreading your joy has like just made me so happy and has helped me during quarantine. And I just wanted to specifically like thank you for everything that you've done.
Thank you for being so supportive and so amazing of like our family of artists. It does not go unnoticed. Like I can picture like you at so many of the things that we talked about today. And it's like, it's so, so appreciated.
Thank you so much. And enjoy the rest of your, what may be night in the dark.
Yeah. This is so funny.
Bye.